All right, y'all, we are back for another episode of Coffee with Falcons series. I am so excited to be joined by Dwaune Jones, Assistant Director of College Scouting for the Falcons. Dwaune, okay, I know I made your coffee, so I know it's just straight black. I know you and Terry, you the boys, y'all are only black. You get your sugar elsewhere. But how many cups of coffee do you have in a day? Because I know life in college scouting requires quite a significant amount of caffeine.
So that's cool. So I'm a sipper though. So I can go through 4 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah.
I only sip like maybe a quarter at a time. So really through the day, it's maybe a cup and a half.
Yeah.
I'm always throwing it away because it gets cold watching film.
Right.
So it's really a cup and a half for me though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that I am so excited to talk about, because I don't think very many people realize kind of the calamity and chaos of college scouting. Yeah. And I mean that in the best way possible. Yeah. But y'all are on the road all the time. Mm-hmm. What is your craziest travel story from your time? Because you've been doing this for what, 20 seasons, 20 years in the NFL?
Yeah.
So what's the craziest travel story that you have?
I was coming from, I was a Midwest Scout. I was with the Saints at the time. I was coming from Illinois State, just went through that pro day and had to drive straight from there to Ann Arbor. It coincided with the worst snowstorm ever. No. And so I had my little 2-wheel drive car I was driving. I had to drive like up the highway and sliding all across it, slid off into the median a little bit, didn't get into a wreck, had to call AAA, and had to get a rental car and go back and go to the pro day. I still didn't go home, went to the pro day. It was crazy. I called our director at the time. I said, man, I'm snowed in, I can't do it. He's like, hey, well, welcome to college scouting. So that was crazy. I was like, man, oh my gosh, this is awful. But that was probably my craziest story.
Right.
But, normally you get flight delays, cancel hotel rooms. That kind of stuff happens every day. Our guys go through it every day. But that was my craziest story.
Yeah, that is wild. I mean, what's so funny is I always say I know when things are happening in the building because y'all are here. I was like, college scouts are here. Things are going down. Mm-hmm. How often do y'all get together throughout a year when it's all of you guys together? Because I know y'all have like February meetings, April meetings, but are those the only 2 times that you really are all in the same room together? Really,
the only time is training camp and then all-star games. Okay. Even all-star games, the whole squad's not there. People are going different places, but typically it's the meetings, all-star games, and then training camp. Those we're all together.
Gotcha. Take me into some of those meetings. What are they kind of like? Because I'm always fascinated by the scouting process just in general because it's such a projection-based business.
Absolutely.
And you have to honestly sometimes be okay with being wrong, which is such a hard thing to, I think, come in, like get in your head. So what are those meetings like when y'all are having all of this discourse and conversations?
Yeah, so I think sometimes people think it's a lot of yelling, going back and forth about, I like this guy, you don't. It's not like that. It's pretty civil, but it does come to a point where you hear the grades and then you become, I know one time where you get everyone has high grades and you're the lowest grade. It's like, and then it's like you have to go into, and the point of it, you have to have a shell. You have to have thick armor. Right. So you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to die on my sword. I might have been a little off, or at my times where, hey, I see what you guys are saying, and I'm sticking with my grade, but you just can't be stubborn. That's the biggest thing. I think to make a great scout, you can't be stubborn. You have to be open-minded. And then if you watch more film, you still feel the same way you do, then, hey, you do. But ultimately, after a couple of years, you'll figure out if you were right or wrong. So. But they're not in the media. It's like, oh, you're an idiot. You believe that? No, we're pretty cool about it. In every place I've been, it's been cool. Like
no one's flipping tables.
No. Now, I will say this though. You get points when it's like you feel real passionate.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you mean to see like, oh my gosh, this guy's about to go into soliloquy about this guy, and it's like his son. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I've done it. We've all done it. It's fun though.
Yeah. How long into your career did it take you to kind of learn that? What you're talking about you don't want to be selfish in your thinking and you don't want to be stubborn in your thinking. How long did it take where you got to that point?
I'll say after my 3rd year, I kind of remember the player, and I was in New Orleans at the time, and one of the veteran scouts was like, look, man, Dwaune, I know you don't like the guy, right? But take him through the process. This guy can play in the league. And I was like, oh, no, this is what I thought. And then I kind of listened to him. I respected him. And then at the end of the day, that player that I quote unquote didn't like played 8 years in the league, and we drafted the player too. Yeah. So I was like, oh man. But it takes you a while. It takes you about, like, to me, it was 3 years.
Yeah.
Because first 2 years you think you know everything and you know absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? Because you haven't been around the league enough. You haven't seen players develop enough. After my 3rd, 4th year, I was like, yeah, I can see it now. And I need to be a little more open-minded and be a little patient.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of the process? Because this is something that spans years. Y'all start on so we're talking about, let's say we're talking about the 2024 draft class.
Yeah.
Y'all start really looking at these guys a year ago.
Yes.
A year and a half ago.
Yes. Yep.
What's kind of, when a player's name hits your desk, take me from that moment to the night of the draft. What's your favorite part of that entire process?
My favorite part, hey, you mentioned travel earlier. I love the travel part of going school to school to school, because it's almost like Christmas, because it's almost like you're going to unwrap a gift and see what it is. Each school you go to, it could be a player here to help you, and then your team is playing during the season, so you're like going on the road from Monday through Thursday, and then that Sunday you're playing. So to me, that's one of my favorite parts. The next part, my next favorite part, is probably once we all get together, and this part in April, and then the coaches get their evals. Now it's like, okay, now let the fireworks begin.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't see things all the same way, but eventually you'll get to on the same page. But those two events during the fall, going school to school to school, that's my favorite part personally. And then also the next part is the coaching meetings. I love those. Those have always been my favorite part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
See what they think.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting part too, because I've had conversations with Terry about kind of the marrying of the coaching staff and the new coaching staff coming in and what they're wanting, what they're looking for to fit their scheme, and also the work that y'all have already done as a scouting department. Right. What's the best way to find that you can marry those two thoughts? I know it's probably a lot easier said than done.
It's like, I kind of look at it like, I guess I look at how my wife views me. It's like, okay, what can I live with? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure she has to put up a lot with me, which is a daily basis. But it's like, what can you live with? It's like, okay, well, we might not like everything, but what are the things that we can find common ground on? Okay, we like this player because he can do this. We know what he can't do. That's probably where the discrepancy in grades come from.
Right.
But this is what he can do, and here's our vision for the player. So those are kind of hard. I know Terry has to weigh a lot of stuff about what we think as a staff, what the coaches think of the staff, and then personally what he thinks. You know what I mean? So you have to come to at least a consensus. Like, okay, guys, this is what he can do. He fits us here. Here's our vision, and then we all have buy-in after that. I mean, there's not a scenario where it's like so chaotic and we just make a pick that everyone just hates. It's just, you can find that balance if you're kind of open-minded about it.
Mm-hmm. Because everybody talks about the recent draft classes for the Falcons. Yep. Since you guys got in here in 21, something that I think it's really, that people may forget is how young these guys are, and the fact that there was a lot on the shoulders of Bajan, Drake, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier to come in here and play immediately based on the construction of the roster as it was for the last 3 years. Do you have a favorite story from one of those guys, like whether you were out on the road or during the meetings of someone maybe even standing on the table being like, we have to get this guy?
Favorite story?
One that we can tell on camera, because I feel like those probably are different.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my favorite story with that. I would say this. I think we had consensus on McElhaney when somebody came out, and I think there was passion for him, and there was a vision for him. Mm-hmm. And then it gets to a point where like, okay, now we gotta go get him, and I think we moved to go get him. But I think he's a player that everyone. It's funny how people develop. We all develop in different ways.
Right.
If you don't have instant success year one, I can't play, is a failure. Year two, if it's kind of steady, I can't play. But it takes time. And then by year 3, year 4, they're players. Now what? Do you get credit for that? You know what I mean? So another story would be like, I know the Rams took a guy like Kyron Williams, for instance, right? Yeah. He got hurt, and then his third year he made a Pro Bowl. Mm-hmm. So people develop in different ways. I know Kyle made the Pro Bowl his first year. So you're like, they hit, you know what I mean? But it takes time. And I think patience is the thing that in this business many people don't have. So I think that's what you need, is a little more patience.
Right, yeah. It's also kind of, too, I think, a society thing, like the instant gratification of how social media is and everything. Everybody expects, and you even see it at the college level with recruiting. Yeah. It's like you're talking about an 18-year-old kid coming in and you're wanting them to change the face of your program. Yeah. And that is what is so interesting to me. How do you see, like, NIL also shifting the way that you have to do your job?
Well, I'll say this. NIL is actually pretty cool because you get to see how these kids handle success, and especially with money, right?
100%.
And going back to your previous question about patience, look at a guy like Jaden Daniels in the draft, right? Mm-hmm. He's now at LSU. And look how long it took him to develop, and now he's the player he is today. And with NIL, to me, I think it gives you an insight into the heart of that person. You have people who with NIL or players with NIL that they'll give their half their paycheck to their teammates, or try to at least give their teammates gifts and take care of them or take care of their family. It gives you insight about what's in the heart of that player a little bit. I think it's for them. I think you can gain a lot from that.
That's really interesting. I say all the time too that Bijan Robinson, if there's a poster child for NIL deals, within those first couple of years of it being in existence,
yes,
I feel like he did it the right way.
He did.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. When you are kind of going through evaluations and looking at draft classes and y'all are all having these conversations, I've asked Terry this before, and I'm curious what you feel as well. How do you weigh your wants versus your needs versus your must-haves on a roster to make sure that you're not reaching for somebody that maybe you do feel passionate about, but it's all about playing the game a little bit with the draft?
It is, because it's a balance, and I think Terry does a great job with it. It's kind of like when you're grading the player, right? So it's what you need on your roster. I think everyone on our building knows what we need, our wants, must. But it's you can't cook the books. Sometimes I like him, let me give that extra boost of grade. I think once you start doing that, and once you kind of cook them a little bit, you get yourself in trouble a little bit. Now, it's not taking a player who's this far down and bringing them up, but you can't do that. But there are instances where if it's close, I can see the need, kind of we need that particular player.
Gotcha.
I can see that. Most teams go through that anyway, if it's close.
Okay.
You get yourself in trouble when you reach from the depths and bring a player up.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard one.
Okay. When you're going to pro days and going and meeting these guys, going and watching them on Saturdays in the fall, you're obviously looking for specific body types, specific movements, twitch, all those buzzwords that we get around the draft. Yeah. But for you, what is something that, regardless of position, regardless of, I guess, even physical makeup, because all of these guys are athletes, what is something that you look for when you're out on the road?
So I'll answer the question about pro days. I look for when players do mess up a drill, I look for the response. Because everything there, you get to see the response. How do they handle adversity? You know what I mean? Because sometimes you don't get to see that in person, but sometimes when they repeat a drill, I look to say, okay, how do they handle that? Because all those 2 months have been training for those drills, this short shuttle, 3-cone, all perfect. But when they mess it up in a pro day, let me see how you respond in a bigger stage. You know what I mean? I think specifically with pro days, I think to me, I just gain more information about the player. The pro day takes care of itself. It's scripted. You kind of know what's going to go on. But for me, I try to talk to other staff members I hadn't talked to before. Hey, tell me about the player. What do you think? Hey, tell me what you really think now, because they're a little more open and honest about what they talk about.
Interesting. When you look at this 2024 draft class as a whole in its totality, obviously every draft class is different in and of itself. It has, different tweaks and turns and everything like that, different depths and different positions. What do you like about this 2024 draft class?
I think for me, this draft class I think you have a lot of players who can be impact players in this draft. I think last year it got kind of sparse a little bit on how we felt about it. This year, I think there are a lot across every position. There's usually a player or two that you're like, man, this guy's going to be a really, really good one. There is a lot of depth in this draft. But for me, I think we have the chance when you look at where you pick them, when you slot, you're like, oh man, we can get a dude in this draft at this particular pick. That's what I love about this draft.
That's a great answer. I think it's interesting too, because one of my favorite things is when we're here on draft night or draft weekend and y'all are in the war room and we can see the live feed, because you have to have the live feed. Yeah. And it's so funny to me because I'll just sit, and this is probably creepy. I hope people don't think this is creepy, but I'll sit and watch y'all as we're waiting for things, because we're usually just kind of sitting around waiting for the all clear that hey, this is the move that they're making. What are your feelings in the moment, in the war room? And y'all don't even have to be on the clock yet, because I know this thing is always so fluid.
Yeah. So during those days, we're all in our suits looking good.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the thing is you got to you have to almost slow your thinking down a little bit, because you're like, what if a team does this? What if this? What if our player's not there? You're like, boom, boom, boom. And then obviously you have contingency plans, but your mind races so much about what could happen. Your heart is pumping. You're like, we think this player would be there, but what if they're not? I mean, you have to really guard your emotions. So I'm like, man, just calm down, breathe, inhale, exhale, And then if the situation occurs, then, what if someone wants to call and trade? Oh my gosh, like, who's our next group of guys? So it's
Right.
you're going through all those things in your head. I know Terry goes through that. I'm sure Kyle Smith goes through that. And it's like you almost have to like relax, breathe. We have our plan. We're good. And then when that player comes, and you projected him to be there, that's when we're all fist bumping, dapping each other up. I think that's the exciting part when it actually falls that way, like it did last year.
It's funny too because you bring up Kyle Smith. I've never seen someone pace as much in one, I can't believe there's not like a rut where he is in the war room. I laugh. It makes me laugh all the time. So I do want to ask a little bit about just your background as well before we get you out of here, because first off, I did talk to Terry and before you sat down in here, and he was like, I have so many stories, but my favorite thing that he told me was you were coming in to New Orleans. You're flying into New Orleans. This is probably what, like
06,
07. Yeah. And he was the one, he was a little intern, little Terry Fontenot, the intern. He's going to kill me for saying that, but he was the one that came and picked you up from the airport.
Yeah.
What was that first meeting like between the two of you?
It was really cool. So I was flying for an interview to be an area scout, and I wasn't sure when I was going to get it. And so he picked me up, and he had his hoopty. You know what I mean? Oh, he didn't have the company car. He had his own personal car.
No
It was
way.
a bucket. It was cool. And I just remember on the ride there to the airport, I'm nervous. And I'm like, I don't know what to expect.
Right.
I'm like, don't mess up this interview. And we're just vibing. We're just vibing in the car. And I know he mentioned he went to Tulane, and I went to Richmond, and it was just a cool vibe. And it's funny about the league. You just don't know about relationships. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought that we would be here today.
Right.
But it was just a cool, and I knew after the ride, I was like, man, I like this brother. He's cool, And then the interview went how it went, but it was awesome. And then to think about where his career has gone and where both our careers has gone, it's been really cool to see.
Yeah. When he, gets the job here in Atlanta and he's like, hey man, you want to come join me? What was that conversation like? Because at that point, y'all had worked together for 11 years?
11 years, yeah.
Yeah. What was that decision for you in that conversation like between the two of y'all?
It was, with that one, to me, you win with people, right? And I knew what kind of person Terry was, great family man, and a man of faith. And I was like, to me, it was easy when he called. I was in Baltimore at the time. And Baltimore was a really good situation for me there too. But to me, I knew we had a chance to win here and build something special, and we're doing that. And when he called, it wasn't really that hard of a decision for me. I go where people are. If you're great people and I know we can win, it was easy for me. Now, talking to the family, we're moving and going to Atlanta, that's a different topic.
Right.
But for me, it was cool. And I'll make that decision 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. It was funny, before we started recording this, you said that there was a point in time when you and Terry were working together where y'all were on the road together, and and you told him, yeah, you should stay in pro personnel because you're out on the road a lot. What was that trip like? Because y'all were together for a long time.
Yeah, we did a trip. I think the pro guys went with us. So Terry went with me. We did pro days. We did a week of pro days. We did the Northeast.
Okay.
And that was a cold week. It was really cold. It was all outdoors. At that time, people really have indoors. I think we went to like Virginia Tech, Richmond, Ware Mary, Old Dominion, whatever. And it was funny though. And I drove him to the airport. He flew back to New Orleans. But it was funny, man. I think at that time, he gained a great appreciation what college guys go through.
Yeah.
It was a good experience, and we were cutting up, telling jokes, and getting to know each other that whole week. I think to me, that was a great bonding experience during that week.
Yeah. No, you spend that much time together, like you're bound to like,
Or you get tired of each other.
or you get tired of either one.
Either one,
Honestly, probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, probably. It's like I'm tired of him talking.
Something that I did not know about you until I was sitting down to do research for this show was you played in Europe.
Yeah.
For a year. Like you went to University of Richmond, and then you were in the league for a couple of years.
Yeah, for a year.
And then played for the Berlin
Thunder. Yeah.
What was that experience like to go overseas? Had you ever been overseas? Like, what? Tell me a little bit about that. I'm fascinated by this.
So NFL Europe is a great developmental league.
Right.
You grow up. So I was a practice squad guy with the Seahawks. They sent, and the way they did during that time, they allocated 6 players per team to go over to Europe, for a team, and then they made their cuts. So when I was a player there, I had never been out the country before. Berlin, Germany, never been. And then when I got there, it is a culture shock.
Yeah.
The food was okay. McDonald's was probably the only thing that we lived off of then. And that particular season was my first year really playing a lot post-college. That was one of my best experiences in my life going through there. Really? I met so many long-lasting friends there. We won a championship over there. It was great. Had a decent game. And then when I decided to coach, now I coached 2 years over there, maybe a couple of years later.
Right.
And then to me, that's when I felt like I really grew as a person and really as an evaluator over there. Because now I had to evaluate my guys, coach them, get on them. I was basically their same age.
Right.
But it was to me, that league was so incredibly special, not just for players, but for like, if you're the number 3 equipment guy here, you were now the head equipment guy over there. And you got that experience. If you're the number 2 medical person here, you'd be the team doctor over there. It gave you so much experience that I think it aided to a lot of people growing over there a lot.
Mm-hmm. How did you grow in yourself? Even, I know you said from an evaluator standpoint, like you grew into your own in that way, but maybe even from a personal standpoint, having to go overseas alone for the first time ever as a kid almost.
Yeah, it's funny. My mom actually came and visited me over there for a game. It was kind of cool during Mother's Day. But two things I learned. The world owes you nothing, and no one's coming to help you. And I admittedly, I think I didn't know the term then, but I think my first 4 weeks there, I think I was kind of depressed a little bit. I think I was like, things weren't going well for me. It was woe is me, blah, 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 all that stuff. But then come week 5 and the rest of the season, I kind of leaned to my teammates. They pumped me up. It's kind of one of those things. No one's going to come to save you. You got to save yourself. And then when you do, people are willing to help you. And then from there, the season shot up for me. And that's one thing I'll always remember. Like, whenever you get in a rut, look, you can save yourself. Right. Don't wallow in your own self-pity. Work. And then, people will come to help you when you work.
How does that shape you even today in what you're doing, assistant director of college scouting, and you're talking to these 20, 21, 22-year-old kids about also maybe your experiences? How does that shape what your conversations even today?
So whenever like doing this job and like talking to these kids, it's like I've never had a bad day working in the league. I've had challenging moments, but not a bad day, because you realize how privileged, how blessed you are to be in this league. So when talking to these kids, it's like, the one thing that kind of bothers me really with my children is this, entitlement. They think they're owed something, like, oh, you were just born, so you owe me. And it's like, the world doesn't owe you anything, and just be appreciative and be grateful for what you have. And so when you talk to kids, that's kind of things you kind of want to hear them when they answer. So I'm like, okay, they have a level of self-awareness, a level of appreciation. I'm like, okay, they're wired right. I get generations of different, but you at least have to have those core things in order to build a successful family and a successful team.
Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about with coaching, you were coaching for a little bit. Mm-hmm. How did you decide to make the switch into scouting? Because that is a switch. It is something that fundamentally is different, because you're not hands-on teaching.
It is.
You are kind of taking a step back almost as a spectator. You talk about being an evaluator. So why did you want to make that change? So
funny story here is that when I got after my second year of NFL Europe coaching, the Texans offered me their quality control job. Charlie Castle was the GM then, but they were going to pay me minimum wage, right? Like whatever Texas was, it was like $10 an hour. Right. He said year 2, he'll pay you, full salary. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I like coaching. Okay, thinking about that. At that time, New Orleans, in between my years, I was a scouting intern with the Seahawks, but another story from the day. And they offered me a full-time job. Uh-huh. You know what I'm saying? Like, in New Orleans, hey, we'll pay you, full salary, and then you'll be a Midwest scout. And at the time, I was dating my girlfriend, now my wife, and I was like, man, minimum wage versus full-time salary. Yeah. I kind of like scouting. Let me try the scouting thing. The guy they hired after me with the Texans was Robert Saleh.
No way.
Yeah. Come on, I was like, tag it. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, they did. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But anyway, so long story short, I feel like I made the right decision. But for that time, that made me make that decision at the time. I have a heart for teaching and a heart for growing people and developing them. So that's why coaching is always near and dear to my heart. And that's why I love that profession. So, maybe when I retire from this business, I'll be a high school coach or something.
I mean, all the respect to high school coaches. My dad's a high school coach.
Yeah,
it's a job. It's a hard job, and you are the example to young men, and it's important.
You're raising people, you know what I mean? And that it makes us a better society in general. So that's kind of like where my heart was initially. Yeah. And it still is, but I'm saying career-wise.
It all worked out.
It did. It did. Yeah. So I'm sitting here now, having coffee with you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you wouldn't probably been having coffee with me.
There we go. There we go.
So one more note before I let you go. Why should Falcons fans be excited about the direction that this college scouting staff is wanting to work with this coaching staff to take y'all to the next level?
Yeah, I've been on multiple staffs in my career. This staff that we have here is absolutely special. They are committed. They are dedicated to their craft. And we have open-minded people who buy in to what our vision is. We challenge each other. We're tough on each other, but ultimately we love each other. I know it's cliche. I know it's okay. They love each other. But to be excited is that we're on the same page and we are committed to the vision. And that vision is going to pay off. Trust me on that.
Great note to end on. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Coffee, Dwaune. This has been a great conversation. Again, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.